At dinner, my son said loudly, "At least Mom's new husband isn't a loser like you." I said nothing. The next morning, his car was gone and his school account was frozen. That evening, my ex called me in a panic. This happened about a month ago, and I am honestly still processing the whole situation. Never thought I would be dealing with this kind of drama at my age, but here we are. I am 45 and divorced from my ex-wife Laura for about 3 years now. We have one son together named Ethan, who is 19 and in his second year of college. The divorce was messy, and Laura made sure to poison Ethan against me as much as possible during the process. Laura remarried last year to some guy named Derek, who works in sales and thinks he's hot stuff because he drives a BMW and wears expensive suits. Ethan absolutely loves Derek and constantly compares me to him in ways that are not flattering to me. The thing is, I am not actually doing badly for myself. I work as an electrical engineer and make good money. I own my house outright and have decent savings, but I'm not flashy about it like Derek is. I drive a practical sedan and dress normally. Laura has convinced Ethan that this makes me a loser. During the divorce, Laura fought me on everything, including child support and custody. She wanted maximum child support and minimum visitation rights for me. The court did not see it her way, and we ended up with shared custody and reasonable support payments. Part of the divorce agreement was that I would pay for Ethan's college expenses, including tuition, room, and board. This was my idea, actually, because I wanted to make sure Ethan had opportunities regardless of what happened with the marriage. Laura agreed to this arrangement. I have been paying about $30,000 per year for Ethan's college costs. Private university is expensive, but I wanted him to have the best education possible. I set up automatic payments for tuition and gave Ethan a credit card for other school expenses. Ethan has been increasingly disrespectful toward me since the divorce. Laura encourages this behavior, and Derek does nothing to stop it. Family dinners when Ethan visits me have become exercises in patience as he makes constant comparisons between me and Derek. According to Ethan, Derek is more successful, more fun, and more generous than I am. Derek takes Ethan on expensive trips and buys him designer clothes. Meanwhile, I am just the guy who pays for his education and provides a boring, stable home environment. The car situation is relevant to this story. Ethan wanted a car for college, and Laura demanded that I buy him one. The divorce agreement did not specifically mention a car, but Ethan kept pushing for it. I eventually agreed and bought him a decent used Honda that was reliable and appropriate for a college student. Ethan was not happy with the Honda. He wanted something flashier, like Derek's BMW. I explained that a reliable used car was more practical for college and that he should be grateful to have any car at all. Ethan accepted it grudgingly but complained about it constantly. Recently, Ethan has been staying with me every other weekend as per our custody arrangement. These visits have become increasingly tense because Ethan spends most of the time talking about how great Derek is and how much better his life is at his mom's house. Last month, Ethan came for his regular weekend visit. I had planned to take him out to dinner at a nice restaurant because I wanted us to have some quality time together. I thought maybe we could have a conversation without all the drama for once. The dinner started out okay. We talked about his classes and his plans for summer break. Ethan seemed to be in a good mood, and I was hopeful that we could have a pleasant evening together. That lasted about 30 minutes. Ethan started talking about a vacation that Laura and Derek were planning to take him on over spring break. Some expensive trip to Europe that sounded like it cost more than most people make in several months. Ethan was going on and on about how excited he was. I made the mistake of asking if Derek was paying for this trip or if it was coming out of Ethan's college fund that I provide. Ethan got defensive and said it was none of my business how Derek spent his money. He said Derek was generous, unlike some people. The conversation went downhill from there. Ethan started comparing Derek's generosity to my supposed cheapness. He brought up the car again and said Derek would have bought him something nice instead of an old Honda. He said Derek understood what he needed while I was just focused on being practical. I tried to change the subject, but Ethan was on a roll. He started listing all the ways that Derek was supposedly better than me. Derek was more successful. Derek was more fun. Derek was more understanding. According to Ethan, Derek was everything a father should be. The final straw came when Ethan said loudly enough for other diners to hear, "At least Mom's new husband isn't a loser like you." He said it with this smug expression like he was proud of himself for putting me in my place. I sat there for a moment just looking at him. Other people in the restaurant had heard what he said and were staring at us. I felt humiliated and angry, but I did not want to make a scene in public. I just asked for the check and we left in silence. The drive home was awkward. Ethan seemed to realize he had crossed the line, but he did not apologize. I dropped him off at his dorm and told him I would see him in 2 weeks for his next scheduled visit. He just shrugged and walked away. That night, I sat in my house thinking about what Ethan had said. I realized that I had been enabling his disrespectful behavior by continuing to provide for him financially while he treated me like garbage. Something needed to change. The next morning, I made some phone calls. First, I called the bank and had Ethan's credit card cancelled. Then, I called his college bursar's office and requested they put a hold on processing any new charges to his student account until I could review them personally. Since I was the account holder and payer, this was within my rights. Finally, I called the car insurance company and had Ethan's car removed from my policy. I also drove to Ethan's dorm and used my spare key to retrieve the Honda. It was parked in the student lot, and I simply drove it home. Since the car was registered and titled in my name and Ethan was just an authorized user, I had every legal right to repossess it. Ethan had no ownership claim to the vehicle. By noon, Ethan's college account was frozen and his car was gone. His credit card stopped working when he tried to buy lunch. I imagined he was having a very confusing day trying to figure out what was happening. I did not call Ethan to explain what I had done. I figured he was smart enough to put the pieces together eventually. If he wanted to treat me like a loser, then he could see what life was like without the loser's financial support. That evening, my phone started ringing. First, it was Ethan calling, but I did not answer. Then, it was Laura calling repeatedly. I let those calls go to voicemail, too. I was not ready to deal with their drama yet. Laura left several increasingly frantic voicemails. The first one was angry, demanding to know why Ethan's accounts were frozen. By the third voicemail, she was practically begging me to call her back because Ethan was having a meltdown. I finally answered when Laura called for the 6th time. She was hysterical, asking what I had done and why I was punishing Ethan. She said he was crying and did not understand why his car and credit card were not working. I explained very calmly that Ethan had made it clear he thought I was a loser who did not deserve his respect. Since he felt that way, I decided he no longer needed financial support from someone he considered worthless. Laura was speechless for a moment. Then she started yelling about the divorce agreement and my obligation to pay for Ethan's education. I reminded her that respect and basic human decency were not too much to ask in return for $30,000 per year. Laura tried to argue that Ethan was just a teenager and did not mean what he said. I pointed out that Ethan was 19 years old and in college. He was old enough to understand that actions have consequences and that you should not bite the hand that feeds you. Laura then tried a different approach and started crying about how this would ruin Ethan's education. She said he could not afford college without my help and that I was destroying his future over hurt feelings. I told her that Ethan should have thought about that before calling me a loser in public. The conversation ended with Laura hanging up on me after I refused to immediately restore Ethan's accounts. I knew she would call back once she realized I was serious about this situation. Ethan tried calling me several more times that evening, but I did not answer. I was not ready to talk to him until he was prepared to have a real conversation about respect and consequences. The next day, Laura called back with Derek on the line. Derek tried to play peacemaker and suggested that maybe we could work something out. He said Ethan had learned his lesson and was very sorry about what happened at dinner. I told Derek that if he thought Ethan had learned his lesson, then Derek was welcome to take over paying for Ethan's college expenses. There was a long silence on the phone. Apparently, Derek's generosity had limits when it came to actually spending his own money. Laura jumped back in and started threatening legal action. She said the divorce agreement required me to pay for Ethan's education and that I could not just stop because my feelings were hurt. I told her to have her lawyer call my lawyer. The truth is the divorce agreement did require me to pay for Ethan's education, but it said nothing about tolerating abuse in exchange for that support. I was willing to argue in court that respect and basic decency were reasonable expectations for continued financial assistance. Over the next few days, I got calls from various family members who had heard about the situation. Some people thought I was being too harsh, while others said it was about time Ethan faced some consequences for his behavior. My brother said he supported my decision completely. He had witnessed Ethan's disrespectful behavior toward me and thought the kid needed a reality check. My sister was more concerned about Ethan's education but agreed that his behavior was unacceptable. Ethan finally called me directly 3 days after I had frozen his accounts. He was crying and said he was sorry for what he had said at dinner. He begged me to restore his car and credit card and promised he would be more respectful in the future. I told Ethan that apologies were easy, but actions mattered more. I said if he wanted my financial support, then he needed to show me genuine respect. Not just when he needed something, but all the time. This meant no more comparisons to Derek and no more insults about my lifestyle choices. Ethan agreed to my conditions and seemed genuinely remorseful about his behavior. I told him I would think about restoring his accounts, but that things were going to be different going forward. He would have to earn back my trust and financial support. After talking to Ethan, I decided to give him one more chance. I restored his college account so he could continue with his education, but I kept the car and credit card suspended. I told him he could earn those back by showing consistent respectful behavior over time. I also had a conversation with Laura about boundaries. I made it clear that if she continued to encourage Ethan's disrespectful behavior toward me, then I would permanently withdraw my financial support. She needed to choose between her vendetta against me and Ethan's education. Laura was not happy about this ultimatum, but she realized I was serious. She agreed to stop undermining my relationship with Ethan and to encourage him to be more respectful. Whether she follows through remains to be seen. The whole situation has actually improved my relationship with Ethan somewhat. The shock of losing his car and credit card made him realize how much he depended on my financial support. He has been more respectful during our conversations and has stopped making constant comparisons to Derek. Ethan is still living without a car and using cash for expenses. I have told him that he can earn these privileges back by consistently showing respect and appreciation for what I provide. So far, he seems to be making an effort. Derek has been notably quiet since learning that his generosity would be tested if I stopped supporting Ethan. Turns out it is easy to be the fun, generous stepfather when someone else is paying all the major expenses. Derek's true colors showed when faced with actual financial responsibility. The experience taught me that financial support should come with expectations of basic respect. I had been so focused on providing for Ethan that I forgot to require that he treat me with common decency. That was my mistake, and it needed to be corrected. Some people might think I was too harsh, but I disagree. Ethan is an adult who needs to understand that relationships are reciprocal. You cannot treat someone badly and then expect them to continue supporting you financially just because you are related. The outcome has been positive overall. Ethan is more respectful. Laura is less likely to undermine me. And Derek has learned that his stepfather role comes with limitations. Sometimes tough love is the only way to reset unhealthy family dynamics. I am hopeful that Ethan and I can build a better relationship based on mutual respect rather than just financial obligation. He is a smart kid who made some bad choices, but I think this experience helped him understand the importance of treating people well. Looking back, I wish I had set boundaries earlier instead of letting the disrespect continue for so long. But better late than never. Ethan learned that actions have consequences, and I learned that providing financial support does not mean accepting abuse. The car is still sitting in my garage, and Ethan asks about it every time we talk. I tell him he can have it back when he has shown me 6 months of consistent, respectful behavior. So far, he is making progress, but he still has work to do. The whole situation was a wake-up call for everyone involved. Ethan learned that financial support is not unconditional. Laura learned that her actions affect Ethan's future. And I learned that setting boundaries is necessary, even with family members. I hope Ethan takes this lesson to heart and becomes a better person because of it. He has the potential to be successful and kind, but he needed to learn that treating people well is just as important as achieving your goals. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is accountability.